When a devoted kindergarten teacher glimpsed bruises beneath the sleeve of a silent little girl's ever-present Mittens, her quiet world shattered. As she dug deeper into the child's strange behavior, her hostile foster guardian, and a web of institutional neglect, she found herself hunted, silenced, and alone in a system built to look away. With the child's life hanging in the balance, she had to confront her own buried trauma to stop a cycle of abuse that could claim the girl next. This was a story of bravery, resilience, and the relentless fight for justice. Before anyone dived in, she wanted to know where everyone was watching from, and if they believed the truth should always come to light, she encouraged them to like and subscribe for more. Miss Callahan, who taught 3rd grade at Brookridge Elementary despite having begun her career in early childhood education, always arrived before sunrise. The halls were quiet at that hour. She could practically hear the soft hum of the overhead fluorescent lights, smell the freshly buffed floors, and feel the hush of promise that came with a new day's lessons. Her love for teaching went far deeper than chalk on a blackboard, or, these days, markers on a whiteboard. It was a calling, a vocation that resonated with her earliest memories of wanting to bring hope and kindness to children who might never see it otherwise. Each morning, she sipped a mug of tea at her desk, enjoying a moment of calm before the boisterous energy of her students flooded in. On the day Lily arrived, a Monday in early spring, Miss Callahan's sense of routine was quietly upended. She first noticed the girl as she stood in the doorway with the guidance counselor, timidly clutching the straps of a tattered pink backpack. Lily's hair was pulled into 2 uneven pigtails, and she wore bright pink mittens despite the unseasonably warm weather. The child looked about 9 years old, thin, pale, and wary of the world around her. When Miss Callahan rose to greet her, she saw a flicker of fear flash across Lily's eyes, followed by a polite, guarded nod. "Hello, Lily," Miss Callahan had said. "Welcome to our class. I'm Miss Callahan, and we're very happy to have you here." Lily did not reply. She merely hugged her backpack and stared at her feet. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Flynn, offered a brisk introduction. She explained that Lily was a transfer from a different district, a change in foster placement having brought her to Brookridge, but gave no other details. The girl's new last name, at least for the records, would be Kessler, after her current foster parents, Elaine and Martin Kessler. From that very moment, Miss Callahan's instincts prickled. She noticed how Lily's hands trembled inside those mittens. The sweater sleeves pulled back just a little, revealing discolored skin around her wrists. The teacher felt her stomach clench. The old trauma and lingering regrets from a distant memory she seldom discussed threatened to surface. She took a breath, put on her warmest smile, and gestured Lily toward a desk near the window, hoping the sunlight might soothe whatever fears she carried. All that day, Lily remained silent. During math, she stared at her worksheet and scribbled answers with a pencil clenched awkwardly between mittened fingers. It made Miss Callahan wonder why Lily refused to take them off. When the rest of the class moved on to a group spelling exercise, Lily remained behind in her seat, curling in on herself as though trying to shrink from existence. Only once did she look up, when Miss Callahan knelt by her side and gently asked if she needed help. Lily said nothing, merely shook her head and returned to her scribbling. Later, at lunchtime, she sat alone on a bench and hardly ate. The other children were too caught up in their own chatter to pay much attention, at least on that first day. But curiosity among children has a way of surfacing quickly. By the second day, a few students began to notice Lily's pink mittens and commented on how strange it was to wear them in warm weather. They teased her in small, petty ways. One boy called her Mittens Girl, while another poked at her mittens and asked if she had cooties. Though the teasing was relatively mild as far as children's remarks went, Lily's reaction was concerning. She shrank into herself, nearly toppling off her chair in an effort to get away from them. Miss Callahan was known for her calm yet firm handling of such incidents. She quickly separated the children. "I do not want to hear another word about Lily's mittens," she said, leveling a serious look at the students involved. We respect each other here, and we don't make fun of someone for what they wear. Understood. The children murmured apologies, more startled by their teacher's stern tone than by any actual remorse. Lily remained motionless, quietly watching, her eyes flitting from Miss Callahan's face to the floor. While the matter seemed resolved in the moment, an uneasy feeling lodged itself deep in Miss Callahan's chest. She had been teaching for 5 years, but had worked with kids in some form for almost a decade. She could read body language, sense a child's stress levels, notice trembling fingers or a trembling heart. Something felt wrong in the hush of Lily's eyes. During recess, as Miss Callahan watched from the teacher's bench, Lily stayed by the perimeter of the playground. She was hugging her arms to her chest, staring at the other children on the swings and monkey bars. There was a sort of longing in her expression, as if she yearned to be part of them but felt shackled by some invisible force. When Miss Callahan noticed her, she motioned encouragingly to Lily. But Lily only shook her head. That same afternoon, during reading time, Miss Callahan got her first close-up glimpse of the bruises. Lily was seated in a corner of the classroom, leafing through a picture book, when one mitten drooped slightly, revealing purplish discoloration on her forearm. Miss Callahan's heart constricted. Perhaps Lily was just a clumsy child, but the shapes of the bruises looked too irregular for a simple tumble. The teacher took a step closer and carefully lowered her voice. "Lily," she said softly, "are you all right? Are your arms hurting you? Did you get hurt at recess?" Lily jerked her sleeve down and gripped the mitten's edge. She nodded uncertainly, as if compelled to say something, but no words emerged from her lips. Miss Callahan didn't press. She had learned never to push too hard, especially with a child this withdrawn. But her mind was already spinning. She sensed a more troubling story. She decided she would keep a closer watch, perhaps send Lily to the nurse's office for a checkup. But official protocols required more. If the bruises were suspicious enough, she would have to file a report with the school's administrative team and possibly Child Protective Services. Yet she needed more clarity before taking that significant step. The following days brought more warning signs. Lily seemed distressed whenever anyone asked her to remove the mittens, even for art projects. She tried painting with them on, smearing colors haphazardly because she refused to take them off. Some of her classmates, perplexed by her reluctance, muttered behind her back. One or two mimicked her mitten habit as a joke. But Lily just shrank deeper into herself. At times, Miss Callahan tried to console her by gently placing a hand on her shoulder, but Lily flinched as though expecting to be struck. All of Miss Callahan's teacher instincts flashed red. She decided to talk to the school nurse, Mrs. Bright, who was known for her gentle manner and thorough examinations. "I just want to check if Lily's wearing those mittens because her hands are sore or if there's something else going on," Miss Callahan explained one morning in the nurse's station. "She won't let anyone see her hands, and I've noticed bruises here and there." Mrs. Bright frowned, a line of worry etched across her brow. "She's new to the district, isn't she? A transfer from somewhere else? Let's see if we can do a general wellness check. But we need Lily's permission, or at least an acceptable reason to bring her in, otherwise it might scare her." The opportunity arose more quickly than expected. Just 2 days later, Lily complained of a stomachache and was sent to the nurse during class. Mrs. Bright asked politely if she could take Lily's temperature and maybe check her arms and hands for injuries. Lily's lips trembled, her eyes darted about, but she finally allowed the nurse a quick look. Mrs. Bright noticed old bruises, faded ones, and a few that looked fresh. She asked, "Lily, can you tell me how you got these?" Lily's only response was a near whisper, "I fell." It was an answer that children so often gave when they were either too ashamed or too frightened to tell the truth. Mrs. Bright documented what she saw, discreetly took a few notes, and decided to keep Miss Callahan informed. The nurse gently reassured Lily that she could come back any time for help, and Lily nodded, but there was an emptiness in her eyes that disturbed Mrs. Bright. Meanwhile, rumors started swirling through the staff lounge. Some teachers had heard that Lily was in foster care. Others speculated that her foster parents might be strict. A handful recalled hearing stories about suspicious incidents tied to the Kessler household, but no one had direct evidence. The Kesslers were known to be standoffish and prone to isolating the children under their care. Whenever a staff member tried to reach out to them, they would deflect any concerns with polite, dismissive courtesy. The tension escalated further when Lily began missing small assignments or showing up late with no explanation. Miss Callahan attempted to contact the Kesslers, but the phone calls went straight to voicemail. She left gentle, concerned messages, but rarely received a response. One afternoon, the phone finally rang in her classroom during lunch. Miss Callahan picked it up, the receiver cold in her hand. She heard a clipped, agitated female voice on the other end. "This is Elaine Kessler," the woman said. "You called about Lily?" Miss Callahan took a breath. "Yes, hello, Mrs. Kessler. I was just hoping we could discuss Lily's progress. She's having some trouble in class. I also wanted to check about her missing assignments and overall well-being." "She's fine," Elaine replied curtly. "She's just adjusting. You need to give her time. She can be a bit sensitive. If she has any issues, I'll handle them at home." The tone brooked no disagreement. Miss Callahan carefully pressed on. "I understand. But there have been some concerns about bruises. She's been wearing mittens all day and she seems fearful. As her teacher, I want to make sure she feels safe." Elaine interrupted, her voice taut. "Look, Lily has anxiety. She bites herself sometimes. Those bruises might be old or from her biting habit. I'm handling it. I appreciate your concern, but it's best if you don't make a big deal out of it. That just makes her more anxious." Before Miss Callahan could respond, the line went dead. She placed the receiver back on its cradle, a queasy feeling in her stomach. Elaine Kessler's dismissive tone and the mention of biting unsettled her deeply. She tried to envision Lily biting her own arms through mittens, but something about that explanation felt too convenient, too neatly packaged. At that moment, the sense that Lily was in genuine danger solidified further in her mind. In the midst of these worries, Brookridge Elementary was bustling with preparations for the annual wellness inspection. A team of independent auditors would soon assess everything from the school's cafeteria safety to the handling of potential abuse cases. Rumors had already circulated that the district was under scrutiny for a few recent child welfare oversight. Thus, tensions ran high among the faculty. Principals, teachers, and administrative staff all felt the pressure of making sure every aspect of the school day was meticulously documented. Miss Callahan, juggling her concerns about Lily and her regular teaching duties, felt the weight more than ever. She confided in her close friend, Detective Jordan Vale, one evening over the phone. He was an old friend from her hometown, a man who had seen a fair share of his own struggles growing up, which had fueled his drive to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "I can't say for certain that Lily is being abused," Miss Callahan admitted, "but something about her situation is deeply alarming. Her foster mother's phone call was so dismissive. My gut tells me there's more to it." Detective Vale's voice was steady, tinged with the warmth of concern and the calm resolve of someone used to handling crises. "You have good instincts," he told her. "Stay observant. Document everything. If you see another sign that's suspicious, file that report. Don't second-guess yourself." She felt some measure of relief hearing his word. There were times in her life she had doubted her own perceptions, especially when it came to the well-being of children. But Detective Vale's reassurance affirmed her sense of responsibility. She promised him she would keep him updated on any development. Time pressed on. Lily's presence in class remained subdued, but Miss Callahan began to notice something else. The other children's impatience with Lily's silent, mitten-clad figure was growing. Some older students, hearing whispered rumors about a weird foster kid, started picking on her more brazenly. One morning, a trio of classmates cornered Lily by the lockers. They teased her for wearing baby gloves, and demanded she show them her hands. Lily stood frozen in terror. "Leave her alone," Miss Callahan's voice echoed through the corridor as she intervened. "Get to class." She escorted Lily to the classroom, her arm gently placed around the trembling child's shoulder. "Are you all right?" she asked once they were alone, her words soft as a whisper. Lily didn't answer. She merely turned away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The moment that truly shattered Miss Callahan's quiet world came on a brisk April morning, during one of those chaotic transitions between classes when the hallways echoed with the clamor of hurried footsteps and excited chatter. Lily was walking with her head down, lost in her own thoughts, when a group of older students raced by, nearly knocking her over. In the scramble, one of her mittens slipped off. Miss Callahan happened to be in the corridor at the time, and she saw Lily's hand clearly for the first time. What she saw made her blood run cold. Angry, raw bite marks and older scars layered on Lily's small hand. Her skin looked ravaged, as though someone, or Lily herself, had inflicted repeated trauma. But more than that, the bite marks seemed almost too large for Lily's own mouth. Miss Callahan instinctively rushed forward, picking up the mitten from the floor. Lily grabbed it back, tears shimmering in her wide eyes. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered so softly that only Miss Callahan could hear. "I'm not allowed to talk about it." Her voice trembled with dread, and her eyes darted around as if someone might be watching. Miss Callahan drew in a breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "It's going to be okay," she said gently. "Come with me." She guided Lily down to Mrs. Bright's office, closing the door behind them. Mrs. Bright gasped quietly at the sight of Lily's injured hand. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice breaking with concern. "We need to document this." She carefully disinfected the wounds and took photographs. Lily said very little, only that she had done it to herself when she was scared. But even as she said it, she seemed unsure, her gaze shifting as though she had been coached. The nurse completed a report, and they forwarded everything to Child Protective Services that very day. CPS moved surprisingly quickly, possibly spurred on by the brewing gossip in the district or the upcoming inspection. A social worker arrived at Brookridge Elementary the next afternoon to talk with Lily. But Elaine and Martin Kessler were prepared with a ready explanation. Lily had anxiety. They claimed Lily had a long-standing habit of biting her own hands when she was anxious. They even produced older medical records that suggested Lily had repeated self-injury issues in her early childhood. It was enough to muddy the waters, to make the situation less clear-cut. CPS could not automatically remove Lily from the home based on inconclusive evidence, especially if the child herself repeated her foster parents' narrative. When Lily was asked directly, "Has anyone hurt you?" she trembled and muttered, "I hurt myself." Her shoulders were hunched, her voice monotone, as though she were reciting lines from a script she was terrified to stray from. It made Miss Callahan's chest tighten painfully. She wanted to speak up right then, to say that Lily's body language told a different story, that the bruises and bite marks seemed inconsistent with purely self-inflicted harm. But protocols required evidence, solid, indisputable evidence. Without it, her suspicions would remain just that, suspicions. The next day, Lily let a small detail slip that bolstered Miss Callahan's resolve. During reading time, she spoke softly to Miss Callahan. I don't like the crate." "The crate?" Miss Callahan repeated gently. "Can you tell me more about that, Lily?" Lily's face paled. She shook her head, eyes going wide. Then she clammed up, refusing to say another word. Later, though, when Miss Callahan pressed in as gentle a manner as she could, Lily mumbled about having to sleep in a crate as a punishment. The notion of a crate sounded more like treatment for an animal than a child. Miss Callahan felt fury swirl in her chest. If Lily was telling the truth, then this was indeed severe abuse. The teacher's mind went into overdrive, recalling every training session about mandated reporting. She notified the principal, Mr. Herrera, who seemed equally concerned. He asked the school's administrative office to push for a more thorough investigation. But they all knew that unless Lily openly admitted to an authority figure that she was being forced into that crate, or unless it was found by an official who visited the home, everything would remain speculation. Amid these tensions, the looming wellness inspection approached. The entire school was abuzz with last-minute efforts to ensure that every protocol was in place. Miss Callahan could hardly focus on lesson plans. She had never allowed personal matters to distract her from her students before, but now her worry over Lily overshadowed everything. Each morning, she wondered if Lily would arrive at school safely, wearing those same pink mittens like armor against a world that refused to see the truth. Detective Vale, true to his promise, began looking into the Kesslers discreetly. His position gave him access to certain records and backgrounds that a schoolteacher couldn't easily obtain. He found out that Elaine and Martin Kessler had a history of fostering multiple children over the years. Some had thrived, apparently, moving on to be adopted or reunited with biological families, but there were rumors about 2 or 3 who had reported unpleasant experiences in the household. A pattern of negative feedback, though never fully validated, hovered around the Kesslers' name. According to the detectives' channels, certain social workers had concerns about how the Kesslers managed discipline, though no proof had ever surfaced. Martin was known to be stoic, avoiding questions with curt answers, while Elaine handled most official communications, presenting a cooperative front that left investigators with just enough plausible deniability to move on. As Vale dug deeper, he noticed subtle hints of corruption or negligence within the foster system. Paperwork from the Kesslers seemed suspiciously neat, with multiple checkups documented even when some of the children claimed no one had visited the house. There was mention of a teenage foster son, Zeke, who had lived with them for nearly 2 years. Zeke had a track record of aggression at school, but the official reports on his behavior at home were minimal, as if they had been glossed over. Vale called Miss Callahan after discovering this. "I think there's a lot of smoke here," he told her, "but I need to find the fire. Until there's a direct complaint from Lily or another child, the system might not intervene as strongly as we need it to." Miss Callahan felt her frustration mount. She confided, "Lily alluded to a crate, but she won't talk more about it. And now the Kesslers are telling everyone that Lily has a self-harm problem. The poor child is so scared and confused. I can't just let this go." She took Vale's advice and documented every bruise, every remark from Lily, every observation from the nurse, and every phone call that the Kesslers failed to answer. Meanwhile, Lily's classmates continued to oscillate between curiosity and callousness. Some days, a few children tried to befriend her, offering to share crayons or inviting her to join them in group activities. Lily never responded. On other days, some children tormented her with bark-like growls and biting gestures, seemingly unaware of the cruelty in their mimicry. One day, a group of 3 kids surrounded Lily at recess, chanting, "Show us your hands! Show us your hands!" while making pretend biting motions. Lily froze, her eyes rolling back in terror, and she collapsed onto the grass as though she were retreating into her own mind, shaking uncontrollably. After that incident, Miss Callahan had Lily sit with the guidance counselor for an hour. Lily remained nearly catatonic, not speaking or responding to gentle attempts at conversation. The counselor eventually managed to coax out a faint sentence, "They want to put me back in the crate." That was enough for Miss Callahan to call Detective Vale again in alarm. "We have to do something," she said, her voice quaking with anxiety. "I can't stand by while she lives in fear that she'll be locked up like an animal." Vale assured her that he would redouble his efforts. He said, "I have a friend in CPS, someone who owes me a favor. I'll see if I can get a more thorough investigation started. We might need a warrant, but we have to tread carefully or the Kesslers might hide any evidence." Within a week, Lily missed several days of school without warning. Miss Callahan panicked, fearing something terrible might have happened. She tried calling the Kesslers repeatedly but got no answer or was told Lily was too ill to attend. On the morning of her return, Lily showed up with fresh bruises around her upper arms, and her eyes were ringed with exhaustion. Miss Callahan gently pulled her aside before class started. "Lily," she said softly, "I need to know if you're in danger. You can trust me." Tears brimmed in Lily's eyes, and she quietly slipped a folded piece of paper into Miss Callahan's hand. Miss Callahan guided Lily to her seat, heart pounding. She unfolded the note later in the privacy of the teacher's lounge. In childlike handwriting, it read, "Please don't make me show you my hands. Please don't make me take off the mittens. I'm scared. I tried to be good. Please help me." That was it, a short, plaintive plea that confirmed everything Miss Callahan had suspected. She felt a surge of protective anger. Lily wasn't hurting herself by choice. She was being forced into something horrific, or at the very least threatened so severely that she believed compliance was her only option. Miss Callahan scanned the note over and over, feeling tears prick her own eyes. She took a photograph of it with her phone for documentation and immediately contacted Principal Herrera. Herrera sat in his office, scanning the note and listening as Miss Callahan recounted Lily's latest revelations. "We can't afford to wait, Miss Callahan," he said, leaning forward, his elbows on the desk. "If there's a crate, if there's physical abuse, we're dealing with a severe child endangerment situation. The school's reputation, the district, the entire system, none of that matters more than Lily's safety." He paused and steepled his fingers. "I'm authorizing an immediate request for a deeper investigation. That means we'll press CPS, we'll press any resource we have. And if it's absolutely necessary, we can consult with law enforcement to do a welfare check." Simultaneously, Detective Vale was ready. He had been quietly gathering statements from past foster children of the Kesslers, locating two who were now adults and lived in another part of the state. They spoke vaguely of harsh discipline, referencing times they were locked in small dark spaces for hours as punishment. Nothing had ever been proven, but their accounts were consistent with Lily's mention of a crate. This pattern gave Vale enough probable cause to coordinate with local authorities for a surprise visit, hoping to catch the Kesslers off guard. The next afternoon, Vale and a small team of officers, alongside a CPS representative, knocked on the Kesslers' door. Miss Callahan waited anxiously in her classroom for any word of the outcome, barely able to focus on her students' reading comprehension exercises. Lily, however, had stayed home again, absent without notice. At around 2 o'clock, Miss Callahan's phone buzzed. She glimpsed a message from Detective Vale. "We got inside the house. It's not good. We'll call soon." Her heart nearly stopped. She had to bury her panic until the final bell rang, dismissing her students for the day. The moment the classroom emptied, she dialed Vale's number. He picked up, his voice grim. "We found a crate in the basement," he told her quietly. "Large enough for a child. It has blankets inside, and there are scratch marks on the wooden interior." CPS found Lily's pink mittens in the laundry hamper. One pair was stained with what looks like dried blood. "We also discovered evidence of physical harm, belts with suspicious stains, plus an unlocked trunk with various restraining items. We confronted Elaine and Martin. Their teenage foster son, Zeke, got aggressive, but we managed to secure the scene." Miss Callahan took a shaky breath. "So Lily, is she there? Where is she?" "She wasn't there," Vale said. "We found out she'd been taken to a neighbor's house during the search. Possibly the Kesslers were trying to keep her hidden, or maybe they genuinely just had the neighbor watch her. Either way, we have Lily now." CPS took her to a temporary shelter for the night. Elaine and Martin were arrested. Zeke, too, because it appears he may have been the one who inflicted many of the injuries. "We'll be sorting out the details, but rest assured, Lily is in protective custody." The rush of relief Miss Callahan felt was almost overwhelming, mixed with anger, sadness, and the exhaustion of bracing for disaster for so long. "Thank you, Jordan," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." Vale exhaled heavily on the other end. "It's not just me. You did this, Miss Callahan. Your determination, Your refusal to let it slide saved Lily. You know, there's still a lot of red tape ahead. The Kesslers will fight, claim Lily was simply harming herself, but we have evidence now. It won't be easy for them to talk their way out of it. Miss Callahan spent that evening pacing her living room, clutching the note Lily had given her. The news about the crate tore at her inside. She kept imagining Lily trembling inside that cramped, dark space, forced to endure unimaginable fear. She wept quietly, letting out the pent-up anxiety she had carried for weeks. Then, she steadied herself. Lily was safe, for now. The journey toward healing would be long, and the system would have to step up. There would be investigations, maybe court hearings. But at least Lily was no longer in that house. The next day, news spread like wildfire. The local media caught wind of the scandal. A foster home raided, parents arrested, a hidden crate discovered. Community leaders, activists, and outraged citizens converged on social media, calling for immediate reforms in the foster care system. Brookridge Elementary, already bracing for the wellness inspection, found itself thrust into the spotlight. Calls poured into the main office, with reporters trying to interview staff members about Lily and the Kesslers. The administration tightened security around the school to protect Lily's privacy and the confidentiality of the case. Miss Callahan found herself at the center of it all, though she tried to keep a low profile. She fielded calls from the district office, from concerned parents who worried about the safety of their own children. Some congratulated her for taking action, while others expressed distrust in the school's ability to protect children from abusers. She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, trying to remain composed and professional while grappling with her own heartbreak over Lily's ordeal. Meanwhile, Lily was placed into a specialized foster center known for providing care to children with traumatic pasts. CPS recommended therapy, immediate counseling, and a stable environment away from potential abusers. Miss Callahan ached for the girl, praying that Lily would find a sense of safety and hope among professionals trained to help her heal. She reached out to the center, asking if Lily might want to have a visitor or if it would be too soon. The staff appreciated her offer but advised caution, warning that Lily's trust in adults had been severely damaged and that she needed time to adjust. Still, Miss Callahan persisted, sending Lily little letters and drawings via the center's staff. She wrote encouraging notes. "Thinking of you, Lily. I hope you're safe and well. You are strong, brave, and loved." She included a picture of a bright sun rising over a flower field, drawn with colored pencils. She wanted Lily to know that, even from afar, someone cared deeply for her. While the immediate threat to Lily had been neutralized, a broader social conflict churned in the background. The local news covered the story extensively, highlighting glaring weaknesses in the foster care system. They mentioned that the Kesslers had fostered at least 10 children over the past 5 years, raising the question, how had the crate gone unnoticed for so long? How had a teenager like Zeke, apparently prone to violent outbursts, been allowed to remain in the same household as a vulnerable 9-year-old? Community activists, joined by a few parents from Brookridge Elementary, organized meetings to demand change. They wanted stricter oversight, random home visits, better training for foster parents, and an overhaul of CPS procedures. At one heated town hall, a father stood up and shouted, "Our children are the future. How can we allow our system to fail them like this? The Kesslers shouldn't have been allowed near a pet, let alone a child." Applause roared, underscoring a collective anger that threatened to upend local officials if they didn't respond effectively. Miss Callahan attended the meeting quietly, sitting in the back, listening as outraged citizens vented. She recognized the importance of their fury. Only with public pressure could the system be compelled to undertake real reforms. Yet she also felt the tension rising as accusations flew. Some people placed blame on the school for not discovering Lily's situation sooner. Others targeted CPS for failing to act on red flags. She noted how easily the focus shifted from Lily's rescue to a blame game that might overshadow Lily's immediate need. Still, the clarion call for justice and reform was undeniable. Detective Vale kept her in the loop. Elaine and Martin are in custody, but they're maintaining their innocence, he explained over the phone. They claim that the crate was never used for punishment, that it was for a large dog they used to have. They're pointing the finger at Zeke for the abuse, saying he was uncontrollable. Zeke, of course, says that Elaine and Martin condoned the crate and forced Lily in there regularly. We have physical evidence, so it looks bad for them. But we'll have to present it properly in court. And Lily? Miss Callahan asked, her voice trembling. Will she have to testify? Possibly, if she's willing and if the case goes to trial, Vale replied. But we'll see if the Kesslers' legal team pushes for a plea deal. With the evidence we've gathered, plus your statements and the nurse's documentation, there's a strong case. Miss Callahan felt a measure of relief. Yet she worried about Lily being further traumatized by legal proceedings. She prayed it wouldn't come to that. Weeks passed, swirling with investigations, media coverage, and heated community debates. Lily, quietly placed into the specialized foster center, began intensive therapy. A child psychologist worked with her to unravel the fear and conditioning she had endured in the Kessler household. Gradually, Lily found the strength to speak more openly about the crate and the physical harm inflicted upon her. She also mentioned an older foster brother, Zeke, who threatened to bite her if she didn't comply, forcing her to put the mittens on so no one would see the marks. She tearfully recounted how Elaine and Martin would lock her in the basement crate for hours when she misbehaved, which could be as simple as not finishing her chores fast enough or leaving her room messy. Miss Callahan kept track of Lily's progress through updates from Detective Vale and the center's staff. Each time she heard that Lily had made a small stride, like sleeping through the night without nightmares, or opening up to the therapist about a painful memory, her heart soared with cautious optimism. Eventually, the staff allowed Miss Callahan a supervised visit. Lily greeted her with a timid smile, a flicker of recognition in her eyes, though her hands shook. "Hello, Lily," Miss Callahan said softly. "I've missed you in class." Lily looked at the floor, shy but slightly more open than before. I missed you too." Her voice was barely audible. Miss Callahan smiled, tears threatening. "I'm so glad you're safe," she whispered, resisting the urge to pull the girl into a hug. She didn't want to cross any boundaries. So, she just held Lily's gaze, hoping to convey the deep empathy and affection she felt. The meeting lasted barely 20 minutes, but it was a moment of profound significance for both of them. Lily had found a sense of safety at the foster center, fragile but real. Miss Callahan felt the powerful urge to protect Lily grow stronger. She considered the radical idea of applying to become Lily's foster parent herself. Though Miss Callahan lived alone and had never taken on such a role, she felt an undeniable responsibility to ensure Lily's future security. She mentioned the idea to Detective Vale after the visit. "I'm thinking about fostering or even adopting Lily," she confessed. "I know it's a huge step, but I can't bear the thought of her being shuffled around the system again." Vale's voice on the other end of the line was gentle. "You'd be a wonderful guardian," he told her. "But be prepared for a lot of legal hurdles, home evaluations, background checks. And Lily might have a tough time adjusting. She's been through so much." "I know," Miss Callahan replied. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to give her a permanent home, a place where she'll never have to worry about being locked away again." And so began another journey. While the media storm raged over the Kesslers' trial preparations and the calls for systemic reform, Miss Callahan quietly contacted the relevant agencies and started the process of applying to foster Lily. She had a small but cozy home, a stable income, and a proven track record of caring for children's welfare. Principal Herrera wrote her a glowing recommendation, praising her dedication and moral integrity. Mrs. Bright, the school nurse, vouched for her nurturing spirit. Even a few parents of Miss Callahan's former students stepped forward to offer character references, describing how she had gone above and beyond to help children in need. The complexity of Lily's case meant that the agency scrutinized every step. There were in-depth interviews, home inspections, and psychological assessments. Miss Callahan answered each question with honesty and a fierce sense of purpose. She revealed her own background, how she had once been a timid child in a broken household, how her love of teaching stemmed from wanting to be the caring adult she had needed in her youth. She admitted that she had no illusions about Lily's recovery being quick or simple. She was fully prepared to enroll Lily in ongoing therapy, adapt her home to provide a nurturing environment, and accept the reality that Lily's trauma would require patience, time, and unconditional support. Meanwhile, the system's flaws came into even sharper focus. The Kesslers' arrests led to an internal review of how local CPS offices conducted follow-up. Investigations uncovered that at least 3 home visits had been paper visits, documented as completed, but never actually carried out. Several social workers resigned or were terminated amid the scandal. The district launched new guidelines for foster parent evaluations, requiring more rigorous training and surprise check-ins. Activists demanded that such reforms continue, not merely in the immediate aftermath, but as an ongoing practice. Within a few months, the case against Elaine and Martin Kessler solidified. Zeke, their teenage foster son, admitted to physically abusing Lily, though he claimed Elaine and Martin encouraged him by praising his discipline technique. Elaine and Martin, in turn, insisted they had never intended to harm Lily but were overwhelmed by her anxiety and self-harm behaviors. The prosecution was unimpressed by such excuses, especially given the photographic evidence and the crate in the basement. The Kesslers were eventually tried and convicted on multiple counts of child abuse and endangerment. Zeke was remanded to juvenile detention, facing his own set of charges. For many, this outcome was a loud, clear message. The community would no longer tolerate turning a blind eye to the mistreatment of foster children. Yet everyone recognized that the fight was far from over. Real change required sustained vigilance. As the legal dust settled, Lily's situation became more stable. Her therapy progressed at the foster center, and she formed a tentative bond with her therapist, an experienced counselor named Mrs. Hodge. She even started participating in a weekly art class at the center, painting bright abstracts that Ms. Hodge interpreted as Lily's way of expressing complicated feelings. In many of her paintings, pink mittens were depicted, sometimes overshadowing the rest of the image, other times shown alongside a small figure that Lily said represented freedom. When Miss Callahan's application to foster Lily was approved, Lily had mixed emotions. She had grown comfortable at the center, and though she respected Miss Callahan, the idea of entering another home, another unknown environment, triggered fear. Mrs. Hodge and the staff at the center set up a transition plan, allowing Lily and Miss Callahan to have gradual visits, spend weekends together, and create routines that Lily could rely on. They explained to Lily that she could always voice her concerns and that no one would lock her in a crate ever again. Those first weekends were challenging. Lily startled at unfamiliar noises, felt uneasy about the spaciousness of Miss Callahan's cozy living room, and barely slept. She would cower at the slightest raised voice on the television, and she refused to remove her mittens even at home. Miss Callahan, wanting Lily to feel safe, let the child wear them as long as she needed. She stocked up on soft blankets, plush toys, and nightlights to banish any fear of the dark. But the trauma lingered. Some nights, Lily woke up screaming from nightmares about the Kesslers or Zeke, expecting them to burst through the door at any moment. Miss Callahan comforted her patiently. She would sit by Lily's bed, offering a reassuring presence. "It's okay," she would murmur. "You're safe now. You're home." Sometimes Lily would clutch Miss Callahan's hand as though it were a lifeline, tears streaming down her cheeks, relieved yet still terrified. Miss Callahan did everything she could, reading bedtime stories, turning on lullaby music, letting Lily keep a small lamp lit through the night. Gradually, Lily's night terrors became less frequent, though they certainly did not vanish overnight. During this transitional period, Miss Callahan still taught her regular classes at Brookridge Elementary. She had to juggle lesson planning, student assessments, and parent-teacher conferences, all while attending Lily's therapy sessions and fulfilling the administrative obligations of being a foster guardian. It was exhausting, but she found renewed energy in each small sign that Lily was opening up, like when Lily shyly said, "Your home is nice," or showed a spark of curiosity about a book on Miss Callahan's shelf. As Lily settled in more comfortably, her emotional state began to improve. She started removing her mittens for short periods, like during bath time or when they were simply too warm. One day, after a therapy session, she asked Miss Callahan, "If it's okay, can I keep the mittens in a drawer, just in case I need them?" Miss Callahan smiled gently. "Of course," she said, handing Lily a small wooden box. "We can keep them right here so you'll know where they are." Over the following months, Lily's transformation became evident. She grew more confident at home, learned that she could ask for things without fear of punishment. She discovered that normal household rules, like cleaning up after herself or sticking to a bedtime, were enforced with patience, not with cruelty. Miss Callahan set up a small art corner in the living room, where Lily could paint or draw whenever she felt anxious. It became Lily's sanctuary. Though Lily still struggled with flashbacks, the presence of consistent therapy, a supportive caregiver, and a stable routine started to mend some of the deepest wounds. One weekend, Miss Callahan noticed Lily had left her mittens in the drawer for the entire day. She didn't mention it. She didn't want to make Lily feel self-conscious. But that evening, as Lily read in the living room, Miss Callahan said softly, "I'm really proud of you." Lily looked at her, uncertain. "For what?" "For being brave," Miss Callahan replied. "For trying every day, even when it's scary. For trusting me enough to let me be here for you." Lily blinked, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "I thank you," she whispered. She turned back to the book, her expression thoughtful. The adoption process, once unthinkable, soon became a realistic possibility. Since Lily's rights had been severed from her biological parents, who had long relinquished them, and the Kesslers faced criminal charges with no chance of regaining custody, Lily was legally free for adoption. Miss Callahan, having navigated the complexities of foster care, now petitioned the courts to become Lily's permanent guardian. She understood that Lily had the ultimate say. No matter how many forms were filled or how many interviews were completed, Lily's consent and well-being stood paramount. When Mrs. Hodge gently broached the topic in therapy, asking Lily if she wanted Miss Callahan to become her legal mother, Lily hesitated. She had grown fond of Miss Callahan, but the concept of "mom" carried complicated emotions. Eventually, Lily nodded, tears rolling down her cheek. "I know she won't lock me away," she whispered. "She's nice to me and I think she loves me." When Miss Callahan heard Lily's words relayed by Mrs. Hodge, she felt her throat tighten with emotion. She prepared for the official adoption hearing, gathering letters of support from Principal Herrera, Detective Vale, Mrs. Bright, and numerous others who had witnessed her dedication to Lily's safety and well-being. She stood before the judge in a modest, heartfelt proceeding, answering questions about her capacity to care for Lily. Lily was present, clutching Miss Callahan's hand, trembling with excitement and nerves. The judge, a stern-looking woman with kind eyes, reviewed the files and listened carefully to Lily's testimony. "Do you want Miss Callahan to be your mother?" she asked in a gentle tone. Lily glanced at Miss Callahan, then nodded vigorously. "Yes," she said. "She makes me feel safe. I want to stay with her." With that, the final hurdles fell away. The adoption was approved. A wave of relief and joy washed over Miss Callahan. She hugged Lily in the courtroom, tears of happiness streaming down both their faces. Lily was no longer just her student or her ward, but her daughter in every sense that mattered. The moment felt surreal, a culmination of months of terror, hope, and relentless determination. Detective Vale was among the first to congratulate them. "You two deserve a moment of peace after everything you've been through," he said, offering Lily a small stuffed animal wearing a pink ribbon. "I'm proud of you both." Mrs. Bright, who had come to show her support, embraced Miss Callahan outside the courthouse. "You never gave up on Lily," she said, her voice quavering with admiration. "You saved her life." Miss Callahan shook her head, smiling through tears. "No, Lily saved her own life by being brave enough to ask for help. I just made sure her voice was heard." The shift from a tumultuous existence to a fresh beginning was both beautiful and challenging. Lily now had a permanent home, but the shadows of her past still lingered. She saw a trauma counselor weekly, continuing to process nightmares and flashbacks. She spent hours painting in her art corner, discovering that watercolors and acrylics gave her a powerful means of expression. One of her pieces, a painting she called Brave Hands, depicted two hands freed from pink mittens, reaching toward a warm, golden light. She asked Miss Callahan if she could show it at the school's exhibition night, a fundraiser for the arts program. Miss Callahan couldn't have been prouder. Word of Lily's journey spread through the community. When the school's art exhibition opened, Lily's painting was displayed prominently in the gymnasium. Parents, teachers, and students alike paused before it, struck by the raw emotion. Some recognized the symbol of Lily's mittens, having witnessed glimpses of her story on local news segments. A hush of reverence fell over the small crowd that gathered around her artwork. Lily stood off to the side, her hands clasped behind her back, unsure how to handle the attention. Miss Callahan stood next to her, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Principal Herrera addressed the group at one point, speaking with pride about the resilience of the students at Brookridge Elementary. "In our halls we have children of every background," he said. "Children who face challenges we adults can scarcely imagine. Lily is a reminder that with community, compassion, and unwavering courage, one can overcome any adversity. Art has given Lily a voice. Let's celebrate that voice." Applause rippled through the room, but Lily only gazed down at her feet, her cheeks warm with a blend of self-consciousness and gratitude. Miss Callahan gently nudged her forward. "It's okay," she whispered. "They're clapping for you." Lily looked up, saw the kind faces in the room, and offered a shy smile. She never imagined that her artwork, born from a place of pain, could be a source of inspiration and empathy. Time passed, and Lily grew. She faced the everyday challenges of a child healing from severe trauma, building friendships at school, trusting authority figures, and handling triggers that reminded her of the crate or the biting. But each day brought new victories. She giggled more, discovered a knack for creative writing, and even joined a small after-school club dedicated to poetry. She stopped wearing mittens altogether, though she kept them tucked away in a dresser drawer as a distant reminder of what she had overcome. Miss Callahan continued teaching, maintaining her gentle leadership in the classroom. She had a new motivation every morning when she rose. She wasn't just teaching other children. She was also guiding her own daughter forward, helping Lily see her inherent worth. The bureaucracy that had once seemed so daunting faded in the face of the love that now filled Miss Callahan's home. Lily learned to come to her mother's arms whenever she felt fear creep in, and Miss Callahan found immeasurable joy in Lily's laughter, in the small jokes they shared at the dinner table, in the everyday normalcy that had been so cruelly denied to Lily before. Years later, Lily stood on a stage in a simple navy blue cap and gown, waiting to receive her high school diploma. She had come a long way from that frightened child wearing pink mittens. As she heard her name called, "Lily Callahan," a burst of emotion welled up inside her. She walked across the stage, shook hands with the principal, and clutched her diploma tightly. Somewhere in the audience, Miss Callahan cheered, tears streaming down her face, remembering all the nights spent soothing Lily's nightmares, all the therapy sessions, all the small steps that led them here. After the ceremony, Lily found her mother in the crowd. They embraced, clinging to each other. "I'm proud of you," Miss Callahan whispered, her voice thick with tears. "You did it." Lily pulled back, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, a tremor of deep gratitude in her voice. "You believed me when nobody else would, and you never gave up." "That's what mothers do," Miss Callahan replied, stroking Lily's hair gently. Over time, Lily decided to pursue a degree in social work. She wanted to become an advocate for vulnerable children, a voice for those trapped in circumstances similar to what she had once endured. She volunteered in local shelters during her summers, working with kids who had faced neglect or abuse, channeling her empathy and resilience to offer them comfort. In her college application essay, she wrote about how she had once worn pink mittens to hide the marks of her pain, and how a caring teacher had helped her swap those mittens for a pen, a brush, and, ultimately, a diploma. As Lily continued her education, Miss Callahan, though still relatively young, eventually retired from full-time teaching to focus on volunteering and supporting community programs for children in the foster system. She became an informal mentor to new educators, sharing her story of how careful observation, empathy, and unwavering determination had saved a child's life. The name Lily Callahan carried a legacy within Brookridge Elementary and beyond, symbolizing courage in the face of systemic failures. The Kesslers and Zeke remained part of Lily's past but did not define her future. Their convictions served as a grim reminder that cruelty could fester behind respectable facades, and that diligence and compassion must always guide those tasked with caring for children. Lily had broken free from their hold and embarked on a life that radiated hope. When Lily finished her social work studies, she returned to Brookridge as a guest speaker at a special assembly about foster care awareness. Dressed in professional attire, she spoke calmly and passionately to an auditorium filled with teachers, students, and community members. She explained how a single act of kindness, a single teacher who refused to ignore a child's pain, had the power to break cycles of abuse. Miss Callahan sat in the front row, tears glistening in her eyes. She saw, reflected in Lily's poised stance, all the years of healing and effort that had brought her to this moment. And in that moment, she was filled with awe at just how resilient a child could be if only someone took the time to listen and offer love. After the talk, Lily introduced Miss Callahan to the crowd. Applause thundered through the auditorium. It took Miss Callahan a moment to find her voice. She cleared her throat and said, "Thank you. Lily's story is one of bravery, resilience, and relentless determination for justice. I was her teacher, but she taught me more than I could ever teach her. She taught me the power of never giving up. In the end, she saved herself. I'm just grateful I was there to lend a hand." Back at home, that evening, Lily and Miss Callahan shared a simple dinner. Lily rummaged through a box in her bedroom and came out holding the worn pink mittens. She set them on the dining table and regarded them with a bittersweet smile. "I can't believe how long I wore these," she said softly. "I never want to wear them again, but a part of me wants to keep them forever, so I'll always remember where I came from." Miss Callahan reached out and took Lily's hand, the same hand that once had raw bite marks and old scars. "Whatever you decide is fine. They're your mittens and it's your past. I'm proud of how far you've come." Lily placed her other hand on top of Miss Callahan's. "Thank you, Mom," she said, the words spoken with a reverence that warmed Miss Callahan's heart. They sat together, the symbolic mittens between them. The painful memories they represented could never fully vanish, but the love they shared outshone the darkness. The small house felt alight with the promise of continued healing and the sense that, with enough care and courage, any child could find hope. And so, the story reached its quiet close in an atmosphere of warmth and newfound beginnings. Lily and Miss Callahan had challenged a system that once looked away, confronted abusers who hid behind respectable facades, and shown that no obstacle, be it a menacing crate in a foster home or a tangled bureaucracy, could stand against the power of empathy and unwavering resolve. Their bond was unbreakable, forged in the fires of adversity, and guided by a shared belief that every child deserved to be seen, heard, and protected. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.